Hello, hello. Oh, I'm on. How are you guys? Are we still feeling alive? Yes. Wow, that was so lackluster. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So, yeah, I'm Sarah from Plexus. We are going to be talking all things hiring and being hired. So that is our intention for this panel. Thank you to my lovely panel guests. I'm going to do the usual of, please do a very short introduction, because I know we've got loads to talk about. We want to cover the candidate side and the client hiring side as well. So we have got a lot to cover. So go for it.
Want to go first? Yeah, cool. Hi, I'm Alex from Aragon. We're a DAO platform. I run all of the operations, so everything hiring, finance. So yeah, we normally hire 3 or 4 candidates from around the world every quarter. So yeah, that's normally what I do.
Sure, and I'm Simon. I'm the founder and CEO of Rare Labs. We've created Rare Network, which is one of the leading trading optimized networks in the whole space.
Hi, I'm Shaun. I'm one of the co-founders at Plexus. Since 2017, we've been one of the biggest Web3 recruiters in the space, placed people across Europe, placed over 1,000 people in the space since we started. So yeah.
Awesome. I'm Fleur, currently at Serotonin, previously at Coinbase, and you've just heard from some of my awesome Coinbase colleagues. Heading up recruiting services for lots of our smaller, ever-growing client base.
Thank you, guys. So Shaun, I want to put you on the spot first. So obviously at Plexus, we get a really good bird's eye view of what is happening across Web3 hiring. Is there anything that is happening at the moment that you think is particularly interesting, or what's your kind of overall take on the space right now?
So I think the market's in a pretty good space, hiring-wise. We saw through 2021, 2022, a pretty frothy period, probably the craziest job market that I've ever seen. That's kind of cooled off a little bit, but there's still lots of opportunities out there, I would say, for good people. I guess, why would you go to us? I suppose we've got a pretty unique position in terms of being able to see what's going on in the space overall. We've seen the likes of the improvement or the increase, in Rust and things like that over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. So yeah, I guess that's useful.
And Alex, are there any particular roles that you see kind of more interest in, or that you're hiring more of recently?
Yeah, so we've, especially recently, we've really been doubling down on our developers. So more full stack. We're obviously seeing a lot of chains launching. So we need more experience across multiple chains to be able to support multiple DAOs on different tech stacks. So we're seeing that. We're also seeing we need more delegates from a DAO perspective as well. So we're seeing we need more operators, people who have experience in business coming in to help run some of these organizations as well. So we're seeing quite a lot of that as well. It's been mainly what we've been seeing. And then obviously the other thing we see, and especially for us, which we've been focused on a lot recently, has been UX and UI, and making sure it's actually we're building usable products for people that come in and are voting / moving funds within DAOs.
And I think when I've been in the space and I talk to a lot of people that aren't from a Web3 background who want to get into working in Web3, and I think sometimes it doesn't always feel like there are those entry-level roles into the space. Simon, is that something you would agree with, or do you think there's still room for people to come over from Web2?
I think the whole space is getting bigger, so there's always hiring opportunities. I think it depends at what level you're coming in at. If you're straight out of university, and it depends on your skill set, right? If you're an engineer versus a marketer, there's different entry paths. But if you're straight out of university, you can just go get involved in a Discord and effectively join a community. And more often than not, if you're any good at what you do, then you get noticed and you get promoted and kind of find your way into the project through that path. And actually, as a good example of this, we've got quite a big Japanese community that exists within the Rare DAO There's a guy that came through very early days, very active in the Discord, started being active on Twitter, and he's now become our community lead. And actually, I don't know how old he is because you kind of just interact with him at a distance. But I'm pretty sure he's 18, based in Japan. He just, by being active, he found his way in and kind of got his kind of job in the space.
So passion can kind of offset maybe a lack of experience.
It depends on the role, but if you're junior and you're trying to get in, I think there's lots of paths. If you're more senior, then you've got to be interested in the space. We, I think in the past, have hired people that have, say, worked at some of the big tech companies like Facebook, and thought that we could train them on crypto and get them involved. And honestly, I think more often than not, that doesn't work out. You need to have an actual background and interest in the space. You need to understand the culture, understand the way that people interact. And you can then find that path across. But if you don't have that as a starting point, I think it's quite difficult.
And Fleur, do you think there is such a thing as an entry-level job in Web3? Have you seen?
I think you've covered some really interesting points on that, actually. I think there is, but I think, honestly, the most important thing in the space is, passion for the space. So I think, yes, you can, totally to your point, you can be entry-level, but I think if you're an entry-level engineer, for example, that's a lot easier if you have, the basic tech experience that you can come in and do it. But if you're looking for community, ecosystem, things like that, you need to have that existing network. I think there's a few people maybe here that are coming along today to try and increase their network because they really want to get into the Web3 space. And I think that's one of the biggest things you can do. Show that willingness to learn, show that you're passionate about the space, that you're trying to learn yourself, and then that's a really good entry point. I even think most of the people that I hire, and probably you guys hire, have come through some kind of word of mouth or recommendation, or someone you've met at an event, or someone you can kind of back channel and say hey, what do you think of them, even if they're fresh out of university. And I think that a lot of the times there's a lot more than whatever's on your CV. It's those kind of extra things that you're doing within the community, because I think that's the biggest difference between us and the Web2 trying to go into finance or a Morgan Stanley. I feel Web3 is a real community, so the more you get known within that community, the more people you know within the community, it in turn opens those doors for you that aren't necessarily just generic things you can create on a CV.
Yeah, so if we're kind of focusing on the candidate side, so for anyone who is looking for a role right now, Alex, you must get lots of people apply. We speak to a lot of candidates all the time that can get a bit disheartened, I'm doing lots of applications and I'm not getting anywhere. Do you have any kind of practical tips or things that really stand out to you when you're looking at people who've applied to work at Aragon?
Yeah, I think firstly, what Fleur said about networking, that's huge. Word of mouth, that's always a massive thing for us. People being involved in the space is huge. So especially, I'll use developers as an example. When we're looking at developer CVs, often we're not looking at where people have worked previously. We're often looking, especially as we're an open source organization, we're looking at their code base. We want to see their code. We want to see what they've worked on in the past. So even if, say, someone hasn't worked on Web3 before, we still want examples in the CV. Especially for us when we're hiring Solidity devs, for example, we really want to see the code before we start moving forwards with the hiring process. So we want to see code in the CV that we can actually review. That's one of the things we try and review quickly. If it's marketing or BD, what projects or where have you been involved, and making sure, again, as people said, that some people actually have a passion for the space, because the leg up and the education if someone isn't passionate about Web3 is so massive that we want to, even if someone isn't involved in Web3, demonstrating that they have passion for that in the CV from the beginning is going to be super crucial.
Yeah. And Shaun, I wanted to speak to you about applying through a recruitment agency specifically. Do you think there's anything that people should know if they're applying to roles via a recruiter that would be different to if you're just applying to a company directly?
Well, I guess candidates kind of know this already, but we get absolutely inundated for roles, and probably 95% of the applications that you get are just not really relevant for the role. So we spend a lot of time filtering, but I guess as a candidate, you want to kind of stand out quite quickly. So, recruiters are going to very quickly look to see where you've worked and all this sort of stuff. And, when crypto was kind of a slightly newer thing, 2017, 2018, people were sort of hiring slightly more on potential, but what we've seen over the last kind of couple of years is that people or clients will look slightly more at people's, their skills, their experience, where they've worked, stuff like that, because it's just slightly more quantifiable. So I guess you've got to kind of be prepared for that, and also just be prepared for a little bit of cynicism as well, I guess, from a recruiter. We get inundated with fake devs. There's like armies of North Korean devs out there, and it just makes our lives, and I'm sure you guys have sort of seen this as well a little bit, like it's a nightmare. So yeah, like we're going to put people through their paces a little bit, and clients are going to want to do code tests, and we're going to want to jump on video calls and all this sort of stuff. So I think be prepared for that, because it's a big problem.
Just while you're on it, the whole kind of fake dev thing, have you guys experienced that as well? And like, what were your kind of experiences with that? Because it's something that I guess like maybe a few years ago wasn't a thing, but seems to very much be a conversation now.
I had someone crawl out from behind the person I was interviewing. So if none of you have come across this before, quite often it's like a room full of people, like a room full of devs, but they are actually quite technical, but they're just trying to get information out of you. And they'll sit in a big room, like a big call center together, with if you're lucky enough to get them on a call, with their background blurred. But this person, obviously there was someone in the background who moved, and then you could see like the entire call center behind them, and you could tell that they then got noticed on video. They ducked, and I could just see them like crawl out of eye line on it. And I was like, I'm just trying a really polite way to wrap this call up. But you do get a lot of it. And I think to your point, like, I know recruiters sometimes get a bad rep, but we do have things like that. And like when I was at Coinbase, we would have like 1,500 people apply to like a front-end engineer role when we were going through great expansion, which was awesome, but also gives us some like real fatigue. So please forgive us if you don't get the speediest response, because we also deal with people crawling out the back of our interviews.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so coming back to kind of what we look for in like the perfect candidate, Simon, I know like you've built out a founding team. What are there like any kind of star quality things that you're looking for in someone that makes you just go, yeah, that's the person that I need?
Yeah, well, I've never had someone crawl out in the background, but I think hunger probably more than anything. Again, it depends on the seniority. If someone's very senior, one of the main questions I ask myself is, am I actually going to learn from this person? So if I'm hiring a head of marketing, like I should be learning stuff from them. It shouldn't be the other way around. And so that's at the very senior level. But I think across the whole board, it's about being hungry. And startups are tough. They're kind of ups and downs. You only ever really hear about it when it goes really well. But I can promise you, there's ups and downs. And crypto startups are even more like that. There's This is now my fourth startup. So the first two are fintech, the past two have been DeFi, and the most recent one before Rhea. We launched 2 weeks after Terra Luna crashed, which then ended up being 4 weeks before FTX blew up. So as a team, you just have to be unbelievably resilient through that. And if you don't have that hunger as someone joining a startup, you're not going to be able to survive that.
So like on the other end of the spectrum, are there any kind of red flags that you guys would look for and just be like, that's obviously apart from them potentially being a North Korean hacker, but Fleur, is there anything that you would see like on a CV or a resume that just makes you think, like, actually they're not going to get through?
Job hoppers. And I know that sounds like probably something people have heard before, but I mean, as a frequent founder, you probably know you really want someone to go on that journey with you, and you don't want someone that's going to come in just when it's really easy. Like, it's hard. It's a hard space. There are so many ups and downs, and you want people that are going to stick with you through those ups and downs and through the journey. So really, you're looking for like trajectory in someone's CV. Have they been at a place more than 6 months, 18 months, 4 years? Like, have they seen that company go through like a downturn, but then stuck with it through the upsides? Because that's really what you want to do as a business and a team. You want to grow together. So yeah, job hoppy CVs, it just shows like a bit of a lack of commitment. And I get the last few years have been hard. We've definitely become more lenient in the last few years, thinking, right, I know there's crashes or Coinbase laid loads of people off, etc. So like, we know those kind of things and we're more lenient with them. But yeah, that's, I think, one of the kind of biggest things for us. And also just actually looking at the projects themselves, like, was it a legitimate project? Was it a company that resonates with like our mission, our values, where we see ourselves going? That's something we really want. If it's lots of kind of like very unknown things or unsuccessful things, there's a slight flag of like, okay, are they really going to understand like what we're doing as a business and how we want to be operating?
And Shaun, I wanted to ask if you were to give advice to anybody on like doing a job search, do you think it's better for them to kind of apply to lots of different things that they like kind of feel that they could do, or is it better to be very intentional and like box yourself in to one role?
I think you want to try and be quite targeted. In the Plexus office, there'll be chats about candidates that are, just desperate, right? They're just applying to everything, and that could give you a bit of a bad rep, right? So I would definitely advise against doing that. I think decide what you want to do and think carefully about it. Don't just fire things off willy-nilly. And I think, I guess candidates might not want to hear this, but I guess as recruiters, we work for the clients, right? Our job is finding candidates for jobs. It's not finding jobs for candidates. So I think probably just a bit of I guess most people know that, but a bit of a kind of acceptance of that a little bit. It's a business first and foremost. So you kind of have to play the game a little bit.
But don't you think if you are someone who is kind of multi-skilled or multi-passionate, how do you then pick which career you're going to push forward, if you know what I mean? Would you say to do that, specialise in something?
I would say to specialise in something as much as you can, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, I want to move into kind of talking about stuff from the, a founder or a hiring manager's perspective. So, Simon, when you're building out your initial team, you're obviously balancing lots of different things. What are the lessons you've learnt during the hiring process that you think you've taken forward?
Yeah, I think one, if I just look back as I've learned through different businesses, is the importance of getting those senior hires right. And I sort of had this belief that you hire fast and you fire fast, and that's the way that startups operate. And I think for some startups, it's true. If you're Monzo at the point it's scaling or Revolut at the point it's scaling, you just need people. And you kind of don't have the time to extend the hiring process. But for crypto startups, particularly ones that are natively Web3 and built on blockchain infrastructure, actually what you're building is so scalable. We did 30 billion of volume with a 10-person team. With a previous business, with a previous project, the third biggest DEX in the whole space, 10 people. And what that means is that you actually don't want loads of people. You want you want a small group of very high quality people. And what I then learned is actually hire fast, fire fast. It is actually the wrong strategy. What you'd much rather do is extend your hiring process and make sure that you get the right person. And then once you've got them in, you've kind of accelerated the process to actually getting that leverage into the company, which is what you're trying to achieve.
I think it's slightly more than just a question of speed, though. I think, as the old adage goes, hire slow, fire fast. But actually, it's not a fast or slow thing. It's how thorough you're being as part of that process. And we see some clients dither and dither for ages and ages over people, months and months on end, and that just obviously doesn't work. But we also see people kind of rush into it after a couple of stages or whatever. You want to do. I completely agree with you about the quality thing, right? I think you want to try and identify the key people quickly that you want to hire, but you want to take the time to find the right people for those jobs. You can be thorough about that process, but still relatively fast, because good people are not going to hang around on the job market for ages. They're going to get a lot of offers. So you need to move fast with the right people, but not rush it.
Yeah, maybe that's, if I add to what I was saying, so when I'm saying you extend the process, what we actually just started to do as a team is put more stages in. And you can still condense those stages. If someone's really good and they're going to leave the market very quickly, you can condense that down. But we actually added kind of stages which were with the whole team, but not the whole team, a good group of the team to do a proper cultural assessment, we obviously have technical assessment. I actually then added for senior hires, would always try and meet the person in person for at least an hour before making that final decision, which for anyone that doesn't work remotely, that just sounds obvious. But as soon as you're like a global team, actually trying to meet someone in person for an hour, not only can it be hard, but it actually became such an important part of that process. And to Shaun's point, if someone's good, I mean, we've hired people in the space of like 10 days. We just accelerated through the process. But it's just making sure that you have enough time and enough people involved in that to make sure the decision is right.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you're clear about that process from the outset, you know what it is, then you're going to be okay. You know, it's fine to interview somebody 5 or 6 times or whatever, but if you're kind of halfway through that process and you think you're coming towards the end of the process, but then, you know, you're sort of thinking, oh, actually, I kind of want them to speak to an investor, or I want them to speak to, you know, another member of the team, and it's kind of dragging out, that's what alienates candidates, you know. It's about, from the very beginning, this is how we do it. We're going to do 5 or 6 stages. There's going to be a technical test. You're going to meet these people and these people and these people, and just managing those expectations. If you can do that, then you're going to be able to hang on to the good people.
Yeah. Alex, what have you found in terms of like a process that works well for you? And is that like a tried and, you know, evolved process thing, or have you had something that's worked from the get-go?
Yeah, we've really evolved. I wish we could meet people in person. That would be great. We hire from all over the world. We are like completely country agnostic. We try and keep people within a time zone. But anyway, process that work for us. Yeah, so depends which role we're hiring for. From a dev perspective, like we normally do, like try and do a lot of research up front, so we're not wasting people's time. Like we'll really deeply go into people's code. Like we'll spend, you know, like often people are flicking through CVs and you'll see it, they'll flick through like very quickly. We'll try and actually, before we go and interview someone, we'll go through their code base before we even ask for an interview. And then to your point, Simon, yeah, we try and accelerate people through those stages. So we normally have three or 4 stages. We're upfront about that, but yeah, and we try and accelerate through those within 2 weeks. So our like hiring time is normally 2 weeks, 14 days, and we try and get through it in that sort of time, and then we try and make a decision at the end. So normally we try and avoid coding challenges because we always feel it's a bit like, you know, we don't want to put too much work on the candidate, so that's what we try and do up front. But like most of the time, like we are going to send out a coding challenge if it's a dev, or if it's someone doing marketing BD, we'll definitely do a task to make sure they're like actually able to do what they say they're going to do. Because I mean, like I don't think it's been said, but like a lot of the times what we see is a lot of stuff is AI generated now in applications. A huge amount of time. So actually understanding if someone's actually able to do the work now is becoming more challenging. So we try and like find ways around that within the process. And then the final thing is we double down on references as well. We always check on references now. We didn't used to, but that's a big thing now is we want to hear from past employers or past people that people have worked with.
Fleur, you kind of did that process with Coinbase, obviously. You built the team or helped to build the team from when it was quite small to when Coinbase obviously became a very large company. Like, what do you think those early hires meant to the people that you were then hiring like a few years down the line?
I honestly think they're crucial. I loved what you said actually about having that like cultural piece in it. And I think I was speaking to some founders earlier in the week about like how important that is, like really when you're building those first few people in your team, or even like the first 100, 200 in your team, like I was asking them, like, what are your values? Like, what are your company values? Like, what is your culture? And I think even if you're remote, you really need to nail those down because it's so important. Like you were saying, you want to like learn off people. Just understanding, like at Coinbase, we had a whole values interview. And as the company grew, it was a lot of those founding people, like the first people in the door at the company, the first few hires that then became like our core values interviewers because they really understood like the grit, the determination, the kind of like person it took to work at Coinbase to grow us. And when you're growing, you still want to feel like that 10-person company. You still want to know 200 people's names. And I think having those kind of things in the process is really essential. Like we used to fly, we had a very funny Telegram conversation before we met in person about this. So in 2018, when I first joined Coinbase, we flew every single employee out to San Francisco to interview. I remember flying out, I was there for 24 hours. I did 8 back-to-back interviews in San Francisco. They wanted like you to see you in person, to have that kind of element, and then fly them back again, which one, it's very costly, and two, obviously, COVID put a stop to. But I think it did teach us some really good things about like how important it was to like get that person as a really good fit, because these people then stuck around for 4 years, 6 years. Some of them are still at the company now, and I think they're the ones that really hold culture together, that have really helped kind of keep that initial spark and that passion for what they're doing and the mission alive. And I think those are the kind of people you need to be kind of trying to retain and trying to keep in the business. So yeah, using some of those things I think is crucial, but obviously not flying everyone out at immense cost. But
yeah, maybe can't do that forever.
Yeah, be expensive.
I want to make sure we have time to come to you guys for questions, so that if you have any questions about finding your next role or like building out a team. But just before we do that, I wondered if each of you could give a very like quick piece of advice for, firstly, someone who is hiring a team, and secondly, someone who might be looking for a job in the space. So Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so looking for a job in the space, like Web3 is open. There's so many ways to get involved and start using products. So like even if like someone like has no experience in Web3, there's like plenty of routes for people to try and use products, experiment, join Discords, join Telegrams. So like that was what I would say, is like really get deeply involved from the beginning. And then on the hiring front, like I mean, a lot of what we do is code-based. Like Web3 is an open source tech industry in a lot of cases. So really getting deep into people's code and finding developers who are adaptable, for us, that's a massive priority. The space moves so fast, so making sure people can keep up with the space and the innovation that's going on is crucial. So finding those people, especially early, is what we've tried to do.
Simon?
I think, so if you're hiring, I'd just say hire hungry people over and above everything. If you're trying to get in the space, honestly, I just get involved. Go join a Discord. Go join a community and interact. And that's typically your fastest path to both understanding the way the space works, but also getting involved with the project.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think the most important thing that you can get right is culture. And it's like you've got to get your culture right for your company before you start plugging people into it. So if you're hiring, then you have to figure out what that is and fit people into that, rather than the other way around. And don't think that hires will change your culture, because they won't. That comes from the top down. If you're looking for a job in the space, I think find your home, like find something that like fits for you. A lot of these different ecosystems have very different cultures. You might find that what's Solana like versus Base or whatever. They're pretty different. They have different values. So find something that fits to you. And then through that you should be able to find a startup or whoever that maybe fits that values more, and then you have the passion for that a little bit more naturally. And that's what you need. And that's what hiring managers, founders, that's what they need to look for. You absolutely have to hire people that are super passionate about the space, definitely. So I completely agree with that point.
Fleur?
I feel like you boys have taken all the good ones now. So
I know, I should have started with you, right?
I know. So I'd say if you're hiring, don't be afraid to ask for help, whether that's another founder, another hiring manager, like one of us, whoever it is. Like, don't be afraid to say like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or like, this is a problem I'm finding, or like, I'm keep getting like pipped to the post for offers. Like, ask other people. I think that's the best thing about Web3. Like, everyone is such a community. Everyone wants to help people. So if you're hiring, don't be afraid to like ask for help. Ask, what's the best way to go about something. And then I also think that's the same if you're looking to get in the space. Like, I think as you've all said, something that's really come out is that like cultural piece, the networking, just like getting stuck in. Like, hey, do you have an opportunity for me to like come and just do some like community work with you for free, just so I can get a foot in the door, whatever it might be. Again, we're all such a community. We all want to help each other. We all want to bring people into the Web3 space. And I've never heard someone be like, no, I don't have the time to help you. Everyone finds a way to help someone in whatever way it is. So just kind of like really utilize that community spirit of everyone. And yeah, that's the best way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah. I was also just going to say, Plexus have a stand downstairs, so if anyone is trying to get into the space and they do want to come and speak to an actual recruiter and maybe get some tips, like, please feel free, I'm volunteering you. Yeah, should we open it up to questions?
No, we've run out of time.
Oh, we've run out of time. Oh, well, you guys will have to come and find us then, and you can ask us in person. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.